the way I look at it is, as big as the universe is, there's got to be somebody out there besides us, and I want to be the first one to find him or see him or talk to him at least.
Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode 84. If you'd like more information about the podcast, it's all at the website desertladydiaries.com, and I invite you to engage with the guests, with other listeners, or me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries, or on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. I'm here with Mary Bell Cassle. She was born in Apple Valley and moved to the Morongo Basin with her family when she was 5. She joined the Army right after high school and later moved to Texas, where she lived for 16 years. After enduring domestic violence, Mary crawled back home to the Mojave Desert in 2016. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So my first question always is, what was your first experience with desert?
Well, I was actually born here, so some of my earliest memories was actually going to Oregon to visit my grandma. So there was a big difference in the environment, and it's like in my blood. I love being here. I missed it when I was away. And when I was down and out in my most beaten down, I wanted to come home because this was where I could heal. I knew I was safe here. It was like my safe haven.
Right.
So the desert means a lot to me because of that.
I don't know that many people think, I'm not that familiar with Apple Valley. Is that kind of a desert?
Well, it's a little bit higher than here.
Okay.
But it's mainly the same. There's no Joshua trees there, but my mom, we actually lived in Newberry Springs.
Okay.
And she drove to Apple Valley to have me because that's where her doctor was. But I lived in Newberry Springs until I was 5. And we moved to Wonder Valley with my whole family, my brother, my father, and my mom. And I actually lived there until I was, I want to say 16, because my mom died when I was 12. And then it was in and out of that house. And then at 16, I actually moved in with Annelise when she did the papers and went to court and adopted me. She became my mom.
Okay.
And so I had kind of a spotty life until then. And then after that, it was stable. It was going to school and doing the things that kids are supposed to do, not being grown-ups. Yeah. And then I graduated at 18 and graduated in June and joined the Army and left, shipped out in the Army in November of the same year. And I was in the Army for 9 months, 16 days, but I got a knee injury.
Oh, no.
Marching, it wasn't any catastrophe, but I continued to train on it, which stressed it. And then I was limping on my final run, and my drill sergeant saw me. I missed the run by 15 seconds.
Oh, my goodness.
But she wouldn't wave it because she knew I was hurt. So I ended up going into physical therapy rehabilitation, where I stayed I was in for 9 months. I was there for like 6 months. And finally I told him, I was like, either let me go or let me go on, because this is not helping. And so they were like, okay, we'll give you a discharge. But they gave me a discharge which said my injury was existing prior to service, which it wasn't.
No.
But it made it in their files where I couldn't get VA benefits. So I actually have to fight it, but I'm working on that. But, I did serve 9 months, 16 days. And when I got released, I come back home. I was here for, I want to say like 3 or 4 months. Couldn't find really a job. Could hardly pay my rent. And I ended up meeting a guy that drove a truck. And he was going to teach me how to drive a truck. So I was like, I'm down for that. That makes good money. I left with him. And I actually got married, which wasn't a good thing. I ended up in Texas and divorced him and stayed in Texas. Lived there for 16 years.
What part of Texas were you?
East Texas, Longview. Okay. It's the Piney Woods. It's 140 miles east of Dallas, but only 60 miles west of Shreveport. Okay. Really kind of swampy. Okay. And alligatory and
different from the desert.
Yes, very humid. And I actually had 4 kids in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was, it was amazing. I had 4 kids in less than 5 years. Yes.
Wow.
So almost 3 full years.
Yeah.
Pregnant.
Oh my gosh.
It was horrible.
Oh.
I love my kids, but it was really hard.
Oh my goodness.
It was really hard.
Well, and it sounds like at that point you were on your own too.
Well, I had
essentially.
Well, yeah. I had my other half, if you will. But he really wasn't contributing to the relationship. It was very physical and emotional abuse.
Yeah.
So it was very hard where you think that you're not good enough and it's all your fault, and only if you were better it wouldn't happen. And that's really hard because really it's not your fault. And when you're being dragged down, a different part of your mind works. Like you go into reptilian mode, so you don't think as quickly as you would before. So then you think you're stupid. Well, why can't I think of a comeback? Why does it take me 4 or 5 days to think of what I should have said? And it's because your mind is just shut down in protection mode.
Right.
And then you beat yourself up even more because you think you're stupid because you couldn't come up with a comeback, or because if they obviously love you, so it must be you, because they wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't you, because they love you, right? Even though that's all crap, it's wrong, it's not true, it's not your fault, it's their fault.
Right.
For whatever reason they were raised that way, or there's all kinds of reasons.
There's a self-deficiency on their part.
Exactly, but
right.
We always bring it, the proverbial we, whoever it's happening to, brings it back to them, men and women, because the same thing happens to the men as it does the women. A lot of women are like, oh, well, men are the abusers. Not always. Men can be abused too. There is women that commit domestic violence against men. And it needs to be talked about just as much as domestic violence for women, because a lot of men think, oh, well, I'm not manly, or my wife wouldn't be beating on me. And it doesn't matter.
Well, and our cultural norms are such that for a man to even admit that that's happening to him, so it's more likely that they will keep it to themselves and not even admit to anyone that it's happening. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we go into school. They have domestic violence classes, and not really like a class, but like somebody will come in and speak to the class, your regular class. And one of the ladies from the domestic violence center came in, and they asked, what is the definition of domestic violence? And the girl said, well, just women for this. And I raised my hand. I said, well, what about the men? Because men are abused as well. That's a good question. She goes, our center helps both men and women now. Is actually in our title, men and women who suffer domestic violence. And I was kind of encouraged by that. Because it does, it is happening to me, and I know what it feels like. And for me to be quite a strong woman and to be beat down as bad as that, how would it feel to be a man who was raised their whole life to be macho and then to go through that?
Strong, don't show emotion.
How much harder for them would it be?
Exactly.
And then it needs to be brought out more, that they know it's okay to speak about it, and they know it's okay to get help because they need help too. Right. And the whole mental health issue, where people think that it's a bad thing if you need mental help, that's completely wrong. It's a bad thing not to get mental help, really, because your mind is my mind is my worst enemy. I can't say for anybody else. My mind is my worst enemy. I think for most people it probably
is, yeah.
It's like, if I see what happened to me happen to somebody else, I would be so infuriated.
Right.
Like, how could you? But it happened to me. I'm like, that's nothing.
Right.
That's nothing. That was like a walk in the park. But I hear this story from somebody else, and I'm so angry on their part. Well, why can't I be angry on my own? For my own self. I'm worth just as much more because I'm me.
It's me, right.
But I can get angry for them, but I can't get angry for me. Why?
So can you talk about how you finally got out of that?
Honestly, I used kind of the same trick that I got through the abuse in the first place, was like, go away. You know what I mean? Like, go outside of myself. And so I kind of did that. Go outside of myself and look back when I was a child of 2, 3, 4, when this was happening because of my dad. And it was like, what would I do? How would I feel for another child? And I was just so angry. It was just sickened. And then it was like, okay, well, if I feel that about somebody else, well, how come I can't feel that about me? So for me, I just got that righteous anger on my own part, that how could he? And I honestly just went outside and started screaming at the night sky. I'm sure I looked completely insane, but it really helped because it was like just all this pent up energy inside of me. It was just like fists at my side, just screaming rage for my own self. And then after that, it was really easy. Those emotions that started coming up, that anger for myself, it was like, you're allowed to feel that. You're allowed to be mad. You know, it doesn't mean I hate him, because I do forgive my dad. Everybody needs forgiveness, and not for him. It's nothing to do with him. I could give a flying leap whether he knows I even forgive him or not, but it's for me, because not forgiving him is a festering sickness inside my soul. And if I want to go on and be a better person and to not to snip that path, if you will, like it
break
stops
the cycle.
here, yes, the buck stops here, then I need to forgive him. Because I don't know what happened to him to make him do what he did. That was never talked about. But I promise you, I will talk about what happened to me, and hopefully somebody will hear it and say, that happened to me and I'm gonna stop it. Or that happened to me and I need to talk about it, and it's okay. Because it is okay. Yeah, it may be really bad and disgusting in your own mind, but it's not disgusting what happened to you. It's not your fault. And that's what I try to tell everybody. It's not your fault. You have the right to be beautiful. And
I appreciate your honesty.
It was really hard. It took me a long time to be able to even talk about it.
Sure, yeah. And now it's like, must feel like I guess, I don't know my math very well. It's like a 360-degree turn. Because now you just started college. Are you in your second or
my second semester?
Okay.
And I'm actually working on what I want to do, auto. This is my passion. Like, I like working on things. And I'm really good at mechanics. When you do old cars, you don't need to know a bunch of stuff. This goes here, that goes there. And
there was plenty of room under the hood.
Oh, yeah. You know, now you have to have a bloody computer to talk to the other computer just to find out what's wrong with the car. I don't know anything about that, so I'm going back to school for it. And I'm loving it. I'm having so much fun. Like, I'm actually looking forward to my classes every time, and that makes it so exciting. And the funniest thing is, I'm smart. You know,
Why is that funny?
Well, I always knew I was smart, but it was like a smart, like, who cares that you even know that? What good is that going to come up? You know, like superfluous information, if you will. And then I go to school and it's like, who knows? And I'm like, I do. And it's like, well, maybe it's not so superfluous. You know, at the time, I didn't know what I was soaking all this information up like a sponge for. But now that I'm going to college, it's like just spouting it all back. And I don't even know that I know it. It's like a file cabinet in there. The right question is asked, and bink, the answer comes up, and it's out before I even realize it. And everybody's looking at me like, smarty pants? And I'm like, you asked? I don't know. And it happens to be right. Don't ask me.
So how did you get interested in the automotive field?
Honestly, it was helping my dad work on cars, and I was really good at it because I had small fingers. I was about 8. And my dad had to have a carburetor rebuilt, which is not easy. He handed me the carburetor and the schematic, the little design that said how everything goes, and said, do it.
Wow. So it's like a puzzle.
Yeah.
I guess, right?
And I was really good at puzzles and really good at getting knots out, because my mom, she would do cross stitch, and she would get knots in her string, and she'd holler, Mary, come here. And I already knew I'd have to get this knot out, because, you know, and I'd be like, okay. So I was always good with little small mechanical stuff. And so I guess it was just kind of a extension of what I already liked, because I'm a tomboy. And I figured out that I'm good at it. And it doesn't matter if boy, girl, purple, black, blue. If you're good at it, do it.
Right.
And right now, in this day and age, I can. And that's what I'm really excited about, is it doesn't matter that I'm a girl.
No.
And they're actually looking for girls in the industry that I'm going into. They want female auto mechanics. And so I'm really stoked about that, because people are realizing that girls can. And I'm not dissing boys. I like boys. You know, we need boys. But, you know, there's things that girls are good at that boys aren't. And there's things that boys are good at that girls aren't.
Well, and I think to that point that, like, every time I take my car in for service, I think most women are like, I'm going to get taken advantage of because I'm a woman and they don't think I know anything about it.
Thank you.
So I think to your point of they want more women in the industry, I think that can elevate the industry, because now you're going to feel like, oh, I'm talking to my peer and she knows about this stuff and I trust that.
Thank you. Another woman is not going to do to me what a man would, you know, and that's kind of what I feel too. And not only that, but I want to be in the business to do right by everybody, because you'll get that person that comes in and you only want a tire change and they tell you that you need a new radiator and an alternator and everything, like pretty much everything under the hood but the antenna you need new.
Right.
And it's like, no. When somebody brings a car into me, I would like to be able to say, I've done a complete inspection on your car and this may go out eventually. You don't need it right now, but
keep it in the back of your mind.
Yeah, it's getting worn out. Or this is the original part. It might go out soon, but you're good right now. If you give the customer the information, they're going to appreciate that, but you're not asking them for the money back or I'm going to change it now.
And that builds even some loyalty because they're going to go back to the person that they trust. Like, oh, she told me that would go out soon and now it's going out. Right. So I'm going to go back to her to fix it.
Or rapport and word of mouth. Like they tell their friend, oh, well, she told me it was going out and it went out and she fixed it and didn't gouge me for it.
Right, exactly.
And I mean, that you get a lot of business that way. A lot of business.
And I personally had an experience which makes me say to people, hold on to your receipts from the shop, because I had a situation when I was living in New Jersey. I took a car in and they replaced the water pump. I don't know, it was 3 months later maybe, something else was wrong with it. Took it back to the same garage. The guy comes out and says, oh yeah, well, I think we need to replace your water pump. And I said, really? I only lived a couple blocks away. I said, I'm going to go to my house and get something and I'll be right back. So I went to my house, I got the thing from 3 months ago and it said water pump, however much it was, and I brought it back and go, looks like you might have to give me a free water pump because you replaced it 3 months ago. And he was like, oh, we did? Do you think I went back to that garage again?
No. And I mean, and it's shady. Like, it's really bad. And it's not right. Or they'll do another trick where they say they'll replace the part and they'll pull another part off the shelf. So what you do is you ask for whatever part they replaced, and then you look that VIN number up, and you find out whether it came off your car or not. And if it didn't, they can get in trouble for it.
That is a great tip.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. So now you're in this automotive program, so I guess most of your classes are around that, but you have to probably take some electives.
Oh, I do have general education classes. Okay. You have to have so many units of general education. And then you get electives, which one of my electives is astronomy. Because
I was hoping you would say that.
Into astronomy.
Right. So. Well, and this is a perfect place to be into astronomy because there's pretty much no obstruction, especially up where you guys are living,
well,
to the sky.
My thing in the article is telling everybody what to watch out for.
Right, and if you're listening and you don't know, Mary and Annelise write a joint article, the High Desert Star Weekender. So it's available for free on Saturdays. I get mine at the Valero down here in Joshua Tree, and typically Mary will have a article about what to look for in the sky, what time of night or early morning to look and where to look. So how did you get interested in that?
I really don't know. I started going to school. Like I said, my dad had kept me out of school, so when I got to live with Annelise, I started going back to school. So before that period of time, I was home taught. Like anything that I was interested in, I had to teach myself. So I think that's one of the reasons I love to read so much. You put a book in front of me, I really don't care what it's about, I'll read it. And I started watching a lot of Discovery stuff, and they were talking about black holes. My mind just went... I'm the kind of person that when I get into something, I have to research it and find out as much about it as I can. And then when I'm done, I set it aside. Well, astronomy, there's a lot to find out.
It's a big sky.
Yes, so I'm still researching since I've been about 8 or 9. I just really been into stars because the way I look at it is as big as the universe is, there's got to be somebody out there besides us. And I want to be the first one to find him or see him or talk to him at least. Say not everybody on our planet is ignorant.
Well, and what's interesting is the desert seems to be a place where those sort of things seem to happen more often, like you have your Area 51, or even people here talk about sightings of whether they're orbs or
moving lights.
Exactly, yeah.
I attribute a lot of that stuff to the Marine base, but I do believe that there is different moving lights that aren't the Marines playing around. I've seen some stuff that made me go, wait, what was that? Like, did you see that too?
Right.
To make sure I wasn't the only one that seen it, because no peyote involved. It was like, what is that? and there was multiple people that witnessed it, and so I've seen it with my own eyes, and it's like, wow. Think about it. If we're just this little galaxy in this little section, and there's infinite sections. Why would we be the only one that had life? And it may not even look like us or sound like us, but it's life. And I just think that'd be cool. Even if it's bacteria on Mars, I'm stoked.
That's interesting that you would put it that way, because I've never heard it described that way. And that makes total sense, hearing it described that way.
Well, that's what Annelise said. One of the things that I'm good at is taking the really hard stuff, the PhD stuff, and translating it down to where the average person can understand what is being said without making them feel stupid. And I don't know how
what a
I
gift.
do that.
Yeah.
I really don't. It just, that's how I understand it. And then it's really easy for me to explain it to somebody else how I understand it.
So when you prepare to do your article for the paper, where do you go? Do you go online to research?
I do research online. There's a spacestart.gov, and
what's that called?
It's, I believe, I'll have to do the research again, but it's astronomy.com, I believe, or .gov.
Okay.
And it actually does articles on it'll break it down by day, and it'll say, what's going on today, or, the date. And what I do is I read the whole little excerpt for that day, and I get the gist of what they're saying, and then I put it in my own words so that the average Joe, the average Joe can go, oh, wow, I want to go check that out, instead of all the technical names and everything else. I mean, to me, that's interesting too, but the average person goes instant glaze on that, So just make it where somebody up here from LA from the weekend that's never seen as many stars can go, they said in the paper that was Mars.
Yeah.
Even if I touch that much, I'm really excited about it, because then they're going to go home and talk about it.
Exactly, yeah. And I know when I read it, I'm like, oh, I need to kind of set my alarm and get ready to look for that at a certain time. Right. Either in the morning or late before I go to bed.
Well, just think about it. All the people that wake up in the middle of the night because they can't sleep and they're grumpy, go check out Saturn, see what it's doing.
Right.
See if Venus has risen yet.
And I even have a little pair of binoculars, so I do your suggestion and kind of tune in and see if I can see them.
And it's amazing how much more you can see just by using a binocular.
Exactly, right. It just brings it that much closer. I think I need a better set, or just to go ahead and get an inexpensive telescope of some sort.
I was going to say, even a telescope, the cheapest $20 little science telescope is enough to see some really cool stuff.
Well, and especially here, because we have less light obstruction and all that kind of stuff. So for me to use a $20 telescope here is probably a lot better than telling someone in LA to try it, because they're never going to see what we see here. Right. I mean, I literally felt like in the fall, I would look out the window and I felt like the best description that I could come up with was, these stars are dripping out of the sky. They are so close, and especially on a clear night, it's unbelievable.
And especially if you'll notice in the winter, the colder the air gets, the less wavelengths there are in the actual air, and then it looks clearer. And that's why a lot of scientists like to do cold nights too, because they have to use less optical distortions, because they actually have to make up for that. And so on cold nights, the atmosphere is slower. So if you see the stars, they say they're twinkling.
Yes.
The atmosphere is actually moving. So the atmosphere is twinkling, not the stars.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so
that's cool.
It's kind of interesting. Wow. So on a cold night, think about that. When you look and you see the stars twinkle, it's the atmospheric movement.
Have you ever experienced ayahuasca?
Mm-mm.
Well, I have. And I can tell you that if you ever look at some of these astronomy brochures and they show the lines connecting different stars.
The constellations, like kind of maps are different.
Exactly. So when I was coming out of, I was still in that state that it puts you in, but there were a group of 4 of us, and we went outside. And the person who was leading it said, look up at the sky. First of all, there were many more stars, because the ayahuasca apparently has an effect on your pineal gland. So what you're seeing is really like, you're really seeing it.
Yeah.
So not only were there more stars, but those connectors were visible.
Like
it
the little
was
threads.
Wild.
I think that would be amazing.
And I think that's not to get too far off track on ayahuasca, but that's the, I guess, benefit of that from a
we are all one feeling perspective.
Yeah.
Was it was really driven
that
home.
Would be interesting.
Looking at the stars.
I would like to try that.
It was so cool. Oh my gosh.
It sounds really amazing because I love doing that kind of stuff, like going to the sweat lodges and just meditating and just trying to be one with everything. It doesn't matter what you believe, what God or anything. You can go in a sweat lodge and close your eyes and just meditate and be one with you. It doesn't matter.
No.
And it's amazing and it feels great inside of you. It makes you feel good, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, I love doing that. I love meditation. I took a class last semester. It was the college success, but part of it was meditation and finding out your learning style, and it was actually Dr. Muchinje that taught it, and I love her so much. She was great because she was really down to earth and taught you a lot of meditation techniques that I've already learned in the past, but
sometimes we forget though.
Yeah, or the way that she did it, or the way that she made you feel, and like she come out like, I know this sounds kind of hokey, but try it anyway. It made you open up to the idea more than just this guru going up, because people are looking at him like, what are you doing, dude? Am I going to be like that if I do that? You know what I mean? And it's no, you can do it for yourself.
It's whatever your way is.
Yeah, and that's what she made me realize. And I really do like the meditation because it opens up to yourself, or like that going outside and screaming to the sky. It releases that energy inside of you. It's really good for you.
I was reading a book and I loved the description that they used to talk about meditation. They said, meditation is where we go to meet ourselves. Because it is like that quieting of the mind and listening to your inner thoughts, because you can actually hear them in a quiet time like that. So.
And sometimes that's really scary because you don't want to hear yourself, but you can sit there and listen to everybody else bleed on about what they're bleeding on, which you really don't give a blessed nothing about. But you listen to them, so why can't you listen to yourself? Just like that, you would be affronted by what happened to somebody else, but why can't you be about yourself?
Exactly.
Why are we always so mean to ourselves?
That is a great question. I had very recently, in the last couple of days, especially doing this podcast with women, I was in conversation with a woman. She's been in Joshua Tree for a really long time, highly recommended by someone else that I had on the podcast, and said, oh, she's been here forever. She'd be a great interview. So we started talking and working it out. And she's like, I'm really excited to come on, yada, yada. And then just 2 days ago, I received an email and she says, you know what? I think I'm not going to do it. I'm not as interesting as some of the women that you've had on. And that breaks my heart.
It really does. And the bad thing is I had the same thing. I was like, what have I done that's so interesting? And Annelise told me, she goes, honey, you've had an amazing life. You just don't know it because you've been living it. Just go give it a chance.
It's funny. It's just that when we're looking inside, we don't really see it as anything,
it's
spectacular,
done that,
right, exactly. Right. Whereas other people, it's just so interesting to hear their stories, and you never know what might come up in the conversation that someone listening is going to latch onto or relate to or need to hear. That's a beautiful way to put it. Yeah. I am so glad you came here today. 30 minutes went by like nothing.
I can't believe it was done already.
But before you go, I am going to ask you to pick 4 random numbers between 1 and 50, and we will read the questions and then get into those answers.
Okay, 7, 13, 15, and 8.
2 numbers are almost exactly as Annelise picked.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. I'm like, if she does all 4, I'm going to lose my mind because they really are like twins now. Okay. And if you are interested in hearing Mary's answers to these questions, please go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and read about how you can become a Patreon subscriber. The questions that Mary chose: any advice for a previous boss? What's your favorite season and why? Those were the same questions that Annelise chose.
Oh, wow.
And then we're going to go to, was there a trait you recognized in yourself at a young age that you still use or has led you to a particular vocation? I think that is very interesting that you would pick that randomly. And then you said 8, which is... Was there ever a time you thought you wouldn't need to support yourself if you married? That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So, again, if you want to hear Mary's answers to those questions, go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and sign up to be a Patreon supporter. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I really want to thank Mary for her courage and honesty in talking about her experience with domestic abuse and violence. If you or someone you know needs help outside of the Morongo Basin, call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. If you're local to the Morongo Basin, contact Unity Home's 24-hour hotline at 760-366-9663. Or call a friend to make the call for you. I've got a shout out this week to new Patreon member supporter, Sabrina. I appreciate you, Sabrina. Thank you so much for being a patron of the podcast. If you'd like to hear the Diary Unlocked portion of Mary's episode, it's easy to do. Just go to desertladydiaries.com, click on the support page, and follow the link to Patreon. Once you're signed up, you'll have access to the exclusive content available only to supporters of the podcast through Patreon. And if you're finding value in this podcast, I hope you'll subscribe on whatever platform you listen from, and I also hope you'll share it with a friend. See you back here next week with Joshua Tree resident and gerontologist Jane Jarlsberg. Thanks so much for listening.